Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Debatable Discussions podcast. Today we are attacking a very common discussion right now in the UK, which is Andy Burnham's new cabinet. So, John, for those of us who perhaps have been on holiday or haven't been as sort of engaging with the news as we would have liked to be, who actually is in Andy Burnham's new cabinet and why is this significant?
Yes, Diane, as you mentioned there, Andy Burnham rolled into number 10 this week, taking the reins from Sir Keir Starmer, the man in many ways who he usurped to be Prime Minister. Burnham had a big opportunity ahead of him because he's able to, as we've said, remould and create a legacy.
Yes.
Burnham's every intention won't be just to last the 2 years. He wants to win general elections, like any politician. So fittingly, Diane, he's had to create a cabinet, a force around him that unites the Labour Party that is so broken, which we saw under Sir Keir Starmer. So it has to unite all these different factions and also include some of perhaps the rising stars or the best and biggest players inside the UK Labour Party. I think the most interesting one, which was perhaps also the most unexpected, was John Healy as Chancellor. The markets were
Yeah.
particularly worried about it being Ed Miliband. He was perhaps tipped off to be it. But John Healy was probably a very good choice by Burnham. Obviously, we've got to see what Healy does. But on the face of it, it's quite good. It's someone who's perhaps slightly less controversial than Mahmood and Miliband, who are both big figures in the Labour Party. Similarly, he's less almost well known to the public, which I think helps a bit. As I said, that sort of doesn't apply to Miliband and Shabana Mahmood or Wes Streeting,
Yeah.
who are very well known. Similarly, their political views are very well known. So I was very impressed in a way with his choice of John Healy as Chancellor. He didn't perhaps succumb to the internal pressures of the Labour Party to make it Miliband on the left wing or Mahmood or Streeting from the more right wing of the Labour Party. The man I mentioned there, though, Ed Miliband, a long-standing Burnham ally. I think they were together under Brown. He, though, did slip into Foreign Secretary. Interestingly enough, actually, it's the position which his brother David was wanting. But obviously his brother didn't get a return from the States and it's been made Ed. I think this is a really difficult job, primarily due to the man across the Atlantic who
Yeah.
hasn't exactly made foreign relations easy.
No.
In fairness to most people, it's a sort of perpetual challenge with Trump. Miliband was in many ways was an odd choice because he's definitely not someone in the Labour Party who Trump get on with. Obviously, Miliband's got a long-standing history of critiquing Trump, an obstacle, but similarly, a lot or most people do have a long-standing history of critiquing Trump and his policies. However, I think Miliband could pose the greatest challenge in many ways, especially with that relationship with Trump. However, it is foreign affairs. People pay less notice to it. And perhaps the door was actually closed to have a meaningful relationship with the Labour government and Trump. So there may have just been no hope there.
Yeah, definitely. I think on that as well, the critique that I've been hearing on the sort of more left wing of the Labour Party supporters is that actually the Foreign Secretary role is beginning to lose importance because most of the high level diplomacy is being done by the PM themselves.
Oh yeah,
I think that's a very
definitely.
fair statement. And also, this would alleviate the pressure of Miliband. I think he'd be very good at dealing with this sort of Gaza issue that is very present right now and sort of everyone's minds. I think he'd be all right dealing with the war in Ukraine. And I think with this sort of Donald Trump relations, I think Burnham will have to take some time from himself and deal with that himself because, as you've said, Ed Miliband and Donald Trump are not the greatest of friends. But going back to John Healy, I agree with you. I think he's been a very good choice, mainly because John Healy is sort of seen as a centrist in the party. He's not really partisan with the sort of West Streeting Shabana Mahmood side, nor is he with the Miliband side. So it provides a bit of stability and actually a bit of communication between the different sides of the party. But also, I have to give credit here. Michael Gove made this point. I do agree with him. Is that John Healy, although a very good communicator for the Chancellor's types of procedural style of communication, he doesn't have the sort of same PR that
Oh
someone
no,
like
yeah.
Miliband or Mahmood or West Streeting have. And then, therefore, Burnham has actually ensured that his Chancellor is not going to do anything to sort of stab him in the back and take the premiership for themselves.
Yeah, and likewise, it means that it's just putting a less divisive figure in. And I think that would have
Yeah,
been a challenge with Miliband. Similarly, with Miliband, he just wasn't seen as a sensible pair of hands.
no,
And actually, your point about foreign policy is very true. Anyone worth talking to is dealt with by the Prime Minister, especially in this day and age with Britain's place in the world order. I mean, Miliband and similarly the Speaker of the House, they're only going to be dealing with foreign partners who are themselves, as the main leader, who are frankly insignificant.
and even if they're not insignificant, they'll be dealing with sort of continuous issues. The war in Ukraine, things that keep going on day in day out, 24 hours a day. But sort of this Iran situation as well. I think the communication between the UK and Donald Trump will be done by Burnham himself. Moving on to Shabana Mahmood, interesting that she stays as Home Secretary. I think it's quite sort of balancing, even I'd say, with her and Ed Miliband sort of being two sides of the same coin, one in the Home Office, the other one in the Foreign Service, heading those and sort of being the signposts for the two sides of the Labour Party.
Yeah, and yeah, as you said, they're very different characters. Mahmood probably appeals as Home Secretary to this sort of slightly, one could say, anti-immigration rhetoric that exists in
Yeah,
the UK.
yeah,
She's on that right wing of the Labour Party. They feel that can work more with voters. She's viewed as being very competent, as being a sort of rising star of the Labour Party, very good government minister.
yeah,
And similarly with perhaps Wes Streeting doesn't know the most about defence, but nonetheless, it seems a sort of, in my eyes, as a more sensible pair of hands to deal with those portfolios. Especially, and it's sort of, I suppose, reassuring to see that Burnham hasn't relied too much on people on his side of the party. However, I should preface that by saying what Darren Jones was to Keir Starmer, Louise Haigh is to Andy Burnham. She is his
yeah,
right hand woman. So he's made her Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, a sort of role in which they do anything and everything. The
yeah,
right hand woman, in her case, to the PM. And I think that's a really essential role for Burnham. He wants someone almost in his inner circle, quite
yeah.
literally in his inner circle of cabinet. Likewise
I
for
think it
Andy.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
I think it makes sense. I think it's a good choice getting someone, again, Louise Hay, not a very public figure, really.
I suppose, yeah,
Hasn't been
ish.
someone that's been in the press all the time, such as Miliband, Shabana Mahmood, West Streeting, etc. So she's definitely one of Burnham's closest allies. I think her appointment and John Healy's are kind of, I think, in the same way. He wants people he can trust in those key positions
Yeah,
so
I
that he
think,
can govern.
yeah, they're different in a way. I think Hay is a far bigger ally of him. I mean, there's some slight controversy with her. She did have to resign as a cabinet minister on Starmer.
Well, it's a very on that. Yeah, I think just to make clear to our viewers who don't know, I think she got robbed in London or something. She reported things stolen. Actually, she found her government phone at home
Yeah,
and then opened it. I think called in the police, something like that. And then that was the whole controversy. She didn't get fined, didn't get
yeah,
put in prison
yeah.
or anything. So
No, no,
yeah,
no. Yeah, but I suppose, I mean, she's had a bit of that. I think she's been
yeah,
known to the press. To be honest, I think she's somewhat divisive as well. But I mean, she's not ultra divisive though, in a way, as you said there. But she really is perhaps the most powerful person in that cabinet. She's the one who accesses Starmer. In sort of Tudor England, it's someone like Thomas Wolsey or Thomas Cromwell to Henry VIII. It's this idea in my eyes of being the right-hand person, the political operator, the Darren Jones, as I said, Starmer. There's a few other roles here which are quite interesting. Jonathan Reynolds has taken over as Business and Science Secretary.
Yeah,
That department has been enlarged to, I think, include net zero as well. A pressing and sort of divisive issue within the Labour Party that would have made it very difficult for Miliband to be Chancellor.
yeah.
Miliband's become quite renowned for wanting net zero. Miliband being on that left wing side of the Labour Party. Pat McFadden's also in work and pensions, a very difficult job, the UK's largest expenditure, and it's something that I almost feel inevitably there will be some sort of upset. And we can mention that in a second with Burnham's policies.
I think also another person to keep in mind is Yvette Cooper, who got moved to
Yes,
Health
health.
Secretary.
Yeah,
In a sort of fairly surprising move, I'd say. I think a lot of people expected her to keep going as the foreign secretary and maybe Wes Streeting actually to keep going as well, but who knows?
yeah. I didn't see her as foreign actually. I thought foreign would be Burnham wants. Yeah, Miliband and foreign made sense for me actually. It was going to be
Yeah,
someone
me too.
close to
Yeah.
him who could unite.
I think people expected Wes Streeting to keep going
Yeah,
for health
in health.
secretary.
Yeah,
I think we'll see how this unfolds. I think the real big story here is Angela Rayner coming back to the cabinet and sort
yeah.
of back into the Labour inner political circles. So she was the now housing secretary. Slightly ironic because she had to resign due to a housing tax issue, which
That
she's
is,
sorted
yeah.
out. She's saying, I mean, fair enough. Resigned, said she had a bad tax advisor, paid her outstanding bills, and now she's back.
Yeah, I think on Rayner actually, Burnham was probably in a slight predicament. He had to give Rayner something because she is a major player, a big figure in the UK Labour Party, and he's followed, it seems, this logic of choosing people that are important in the party to unite it, to perhaps provide more of a sense of direction and unity that it had under Starmer. What will be interesting is how much Burnham trusts Angela Rayner. By this, I mean one of Burnham's big policies is devolution, which could fall under Rayner's remit as Housing and Local Government Secretary. So it'll be interesting if Burnham trusts her with that, because that's one of his landmark policies. He's coming in as the former mayor of Greater Manchester, who was arguing for further devolution. So I think it will be interesting how much he trusts Rayner. Is he going to give her that matter to deal with, or is he going to sideline her a bit more?
yeah,
On this day, Anne, perhaps we should also mention what Burnham has done in the last few days. I think he started with a clear purpose and a clear goal, and
yeah.
that's to achieve small but somewhat tangible things in his first days of office, which
I think
looks
that's a good
impressive,
plan. Yeah,
especially with this whole rhetoric around Starmer not achieving much.
yeah.
So, number 10 of the North, which does have its critics and many, many flaws. Not only, I mean, to be honest, I'll touch on the number 10 of the North, which his idea is to sort of combat the North South divide in the UK. I think it works, but I think trying to combat the North-South divide in the UK, Burnham potentially actually risks actually emphasising it and making it seem a bigger thing than it actually is. Perhaps the UK is London-centric, but it's very difficult. And not many states can be like, let's say, Germany, where there is a very decentralised economy.
Yeah.
France is centralised upon Paris. I don't know, would it be Italy is centralised upon the north of their
Milan,
country,
really.
Milan? So, yeah, so I do think Burnham risks emphasising the north south divide in the UK, which
Yeah.
he does seem to actually be doing.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I think on that, it's interesting to see how it's going to play out. I think it's a good move now, to be honest, for his first days of office. Who knows what actually number 10 North will actually do and
yeah,
how big, how important it's actually going to be. If if it's just a sort of statement,
Yeah.
I think it's a good play by him. He's managed to get a decent amount of support from sort of disenfranchised people in the north about it quite quickly. But I think it's really premature because we don't actually know what the purpose of the building is.
We don't know what it is, but I do think it is just this way of almost trying to win publicity in my eyes by
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
make the north-south divide, by trying to emphasize it or
yeah.
accentuate it. But similarly,
Another
oh yeah,
another thing that he's done, which has been quite well received, is he's removed VAT of energy bills.
yeah,
Again, very small change, administrative change, really, for him. It didn't take a lot of effort or massive bill. But I think this is what he needs to do. I think he needs to keep focusing on these small issues that he can easily fix. And if he can pile up enough of them, there'll be a significant impact. Same with capping bus fares at £2 nationally, which again is going to just take off a little bit of that pressure of some people, but also more generally, I think it's going to make it clear about what his agenda is. His agenda is about reducing the cost of living and making ordinary life every single day just a bit better.
yeah,
And last but not least, the pub's business rate
yeah. He's cut
discount of
business
20%.
rates, but I think the biggest issue with this all is that, as you said there, Diane, I agree with this completely. It's excellent publicity.
Yeah.
These are sort of small wins, but I think small issues and small wins become far larger things. So there's going to be questions on how to fund this.
Well,
He
they've
plans
sorted
further
that out
projects.
already.
Well, he hasn't. He hasn't. He claimed there was 850 million from the digital ID project, which apparently
Yeah.
doesn't exist. Which people in the Labour Party have said doesn't
I
exist.
think
It was
another thing
earmarked.
he said, though, is
It's going to
that
be
they
raised
will.
taxes. I
No,
think.
no. I think what he said is rates of other businesses will go up to pay for the current business rates for pubs. So he said that betting, high street betting, vape shops, and other tobacco stores will have higher business rates that will then pay for these cuts.
Yeah, still, but I mean, okay, he can try and do that. Businesses that are notorious for avoiding tax, he can try and tax them more. But I think in reality, there will be raised taxes. Burnham is a big spender. He's used to being someone who was given money as the mayor of Greater Manchester to effectively
Yeah,
spend. Um, it's where you sort of lie upon economics. I'm of the view in the UK that we should actually just cut spending, and then you can sort of lower taxes and sort of perhaps prioritize economic growth in that way. But Burnham, I think the issue Burnham faces is spending. It's how to fund all this. So it will be interesting. Obviously, as we said, he's got Healy as Chancellor, so he'll be working this out currently in office.
yeah,
So I think there's challenges ahead of Burnham, but as we said there equally, Dan, there's probably opportunities ahead of him as well.
definitely.
Um, he does have a good opportunity. It seems like he's almost got one of the best opportunities of the last. Well, actually, saying
10
that
years,
Starmer had a
yeah.
great opportunity with a huge majority, but Burnham does have a good opportunity to do something. So it will be interesting what he makes of this opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And also, not just that, but he's got sort of a fixed mandate. We'll see
Yeah,
sort of reformer jumping up and down about a general election. I mean, who knows? I think some people are speculating that he's doing these small wins now with maybe calling a general election quite soon and to try and extend his term even with the cost of losing some seats. I don't know about that, to be honest. I think we'll
me
see.
too.
To
I
me, it
think,
doesn't make any
yeah,
sense doing it, but
yeah,
at the same time, if he feels that there's a moment they can maintain
counts.
that
Yeah,
majority in some way and extend their term by 3-4 years, I mean, it's a no-brain decision to go for it. But just before we end, we
yes,
talked about what happened and we talked about who's in the cabinet. We actually haven't talked about who's not in the cabinet anymore.
yes, that's a good point.
There's two important names, one being David Lammy
Yes,
and the second one being Rachel Reeves.
yeah. I mean, I'll briefly touch on this, Diane. I think Rachel Reeves is sort of borderline political suicide to include her in her cabinet, especially how unpopular she's been. So I'm not surprised. But also, I think there's this idea of being a break from the past. Burnham wants to
Yeah,
be. He wants to be a new Labour authority. And with those almost landmark figures like Darren Jones, like David Lammy, like Rachel Reeves, those landmark figures of Starmer's Labour, he had to say no to them. Because personally, they're probably not on sort of what he wants, but also, is it perhaps transitioning the party from where it's been for the last only 2 years, but for the last 2 years?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, definitely there had to be some change, and definitely some people had to go because Burnham has said that he wants to do things differently, he wants Labour
Yeah,
to work differently, to operate differently, and said that Labour hasn't been good enough. And to say all that and to keep the same team is simply bizarre. So yeah, I think definitely a good choice. We'll see what they do, and we'll comment on it as it happens. But definitely, as you said, a load of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities are ahead for him.
yeah. So we've hoped you've enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next week. Please do like, subscribe, comment, follow, do almost anything you can to engage and interact with the podcast, especially because we've got some exciting things on the horizon.
Yeah. See you then.
See you then.